All right, let's dive right in. Today, we are exploring one of the most universally terrifying tropes in all of human storytelling, the bottomless pit. You know that feeling, right? There's just something primal and deeply unsettling about an abyss that literally never ends. It's a concept that has fueled fear for centuries. And today, we're going to break down exactly how different creators use this fear to completely mess with our heads. We'll be pulling from an intense psychological film, some sprawling internet creepypastas, and collaborative creative writing to see exactly how this terror evolves.
So that brings us to the core of our explainer today. What actually happens when we stare into the void? Does it stare back? Does it drive us completely mad? Or does it reveal something deeply hidden within ourselves? We're going to structure this descent into 3 distinct layers. We'll start with the grounded psychological fear of just being trapped. Then we'll plummet into some mind-bending cosmic horror, and finally, we'll hit the metaphysical bottom, or, well, lack thereof, to see what the abyss really says about human nature.
Part 1. Madness in a Hole. Okay, to establish our baseline of terror, we are looking at a massive Reddit horror community discussion about the 2001 psychological thriller The Hole. And what is so fascinating here is how this film strips the horror down to its absolute bare bones. Think about it. 4 high school students locked inside an underground bunker. That's it. There are no monsters down there. There are no ghosts or supernatural entities. The horror comes entirely from claustrophobia, isolation, and the terrifying fragility of the human mind. As the days tick by, the physical boundaries of that hole become a literal pressure cooker that completely shatters their sanity. It just goes to show you that you don't always need a monster in the dark, because sometimes the dark itself is more than enough to break you.
But there's this really fascinating real-world parallel the community pointed out here. They neutrally compare the wildly diverging paths of the film's 2 lead actresses. On the left, we've got Keira Knightley, who at the time was virtually unknown, but obviously went on to become a massive global superstar. And on the right is Thora Birch, who was the established, rising star at the time, but her career unexpectedly faded in the years that followed. Some users made the profound point that the metaphorical hole of the Hollywood machine treats people in vastly different, totally unpredictable ways. It literally swallows some careers whole while catapulting others straight to the stratosphere.
Part 2. The bottomless pit of revelation. We are now leaving the mundane limits of the human mind and plunging thousands of feet straight into an epic, cosmic horror creepypasta set in the scorching, dead sands of Death Valley. We follow 3 friends, our narrator, a heavily tattooed guy named Bear, and his girlfriend Stephanie. Out in the unforgiving 100-degree heat, they stumble across a perfectly circular, 30-foot-wide hole with these ancient granite steps spiraling endlessly down into the blackness. Driven by a mix of curiosity and, honestly, greed, they start walking down. From the sun-baked entrance, down through terrifyingly tight tunnels, into an impossible underground metropolis called the City of Bloodstone, past grotesque entities, and ultimately towards the very center of the pit.
And it's in those unimaginable depths that they uncover the true nature of this abyss. They run into an armed agent underground who delivers this absolutely chilling line: "God has gone totally insane." As the narrator quickly learns, this pit isn't just some cave system. It is quite literally a cosmic prison. The creator of the universe shattered their own mind, bringing existence into being, and now lies dying in the dark, chained up by angels to prevent the complete destruction of reality. The characters realize they are basically walking through the immune system of a dying deity. Let that sink in for a second.
Section 3. Rules for the Abyss.
With a premise that massive, survival essentially becomes a high-stakes puzzle, where one wrong move equals agonizing death. During their descent, our trio stumbles across a dying girl who hands them an ancient leather-bound Bible. And this book is marked at Revelation chapter 9 with a terrifying bookmark, a mummified child's finger. Yeah, no thank you. Inside are the exact chilling instructions they have to follow to stay alive. Step 1. If you see the angel of death, which is a creature with a backward-facing head covered in snapping eels, you must immediately slice your own flesh and offer her your blood. Step 2. If you hear a deafening biblical trumpet sound, you have mere seconds to hide in a stone house before a wave of blue fire melts the flesh right off your bones. And Step 3. When the wailing shadow creatures approach, you have to squeeze your eyes shut and count to 30. If you peek, they will literally suck your soul out through your eyes.
So, what happens if you break a rule? Well, you face the horrors roaming the dark, like those cursed with the mark of Cain. This is where it becomes pure, visceral, sensory terror. This mutation turns people into 10-foot-tall monsters with peeled skin, glowing green eyes, pulsing black veins filled with poison, and rapid bone regeneration. You literally have to decapitate them just to slow them down. And crazily enough, they aren't even the worst things down there. The trio also has to battle giant, flying scorpions the size of Great Danes that have the hairless, mutating faces of human children. The abyss tests literally every limit of human endurance.
Which brings us to the climax of this terrifying saga. Deep in the core, the group finally encounters Abaddon, a 50-foot-tall demonic entity with a voice like a booming cannon. And right here, a brutal twist occurs. Stephanie reveals she isn't just an adventurous girlfriend. She is actually a cultist who orchestrated this entire trip. She possesses an ancient black key and intends to free Abaddon to trigger the apocalypse. She kneels before the demon, but remember the rules. Mortals cannot look upon the face of Abaddon. Upon gazing at him, Stephanie shrieks as her face literally melts into candle wax, leaving nothing behind but a skeleton. The narrator barely manages to escape back to the surface, throwing that key straight into the Pacific Ocean.
Section 4. Dumping ground for humanity.
Okay, let's take a breath and pivot for a second. We've seen the abyss as a psychological trap and as a massive cosmic prison. But what if a bottomless pit just appeared one day and society started using it as a giant garbage dump? In a series of incredible Reddit writing prompts, we get to see the bizarre, sometimes hilarious, mostly terrifying interactions humanity has with an endless void. People just start throwing everything in. A botched bank heist ends with a truck full of millions disappearing into the dark forever. But the twist is, the void doesn't just take, it responds. When human explorers jump in, they don't die. Instead, blood-red trees suddenly sprout at the edge of the hole, bearing the exact screaming faces of those explorers in their bark. And in a true display of consequence, humanity decides to dump 15,000 nuclear weapons into the hole just to get rid of them. Guess what happens? Exactly 6 months later, those exact same weapons rain right back down from the sky. So why does this matter? And what should you take away from this? Well, these stories reveal a pretty fundamental truth about human nature. We treat the hole as a mirror for society's waste. We treat it as an exit point for human despair, a convenient place for broken people to just vanish. It becomes a literal time capsule of our worst mistakes. We constantly try to bury the things we just don't want to deal with, the things we are deeply ashamed of, but the void always, eventually reflects them right back at us.
Part 5. The Lure of the Void.
But, there is also this magnetic, almost romantic pull to the unknown. And no story captures that better than the incredibly tragic tale of Claire's Fae. Claire's was the last of 7 beautiful sisters. One by one, as if caught in some hypnotic trance, her sisters, and eventually her parents, all walked into the woods at night and jumped straight into the hole. Claire's was the only one left. She would just stand at the edge for hours staring in. The townspeople, absolutely terrified of her family's curse, formed an angry mob and tried to shove her in. But as a man charged to push her over the edge, Clarice simply sidestepped him. The hole suddenly rumbled, and a massive tree root shot out of the abyss, wrapped completely around the attacker and dragged him screaming into the dark. Clarice just looked back at the terrified townspeople with a sad smile and delivered this unforgettable line: "The hole is in love with me."
This completely flips the trope on its head. The bottomless pit is no longer just some passive geographical hazard or a convenient garbage disposal. It is a living, breathing, and incredibly jealous entity. It fiercely protects the things, and more importantly, the people it claims as its own. It desires Clarice, and it is more than willing to destroy absolutely anyone who tries to take that choice away from her.
Section 6. The Void Stares Back.
So, as we reach the end of our descent today, we need to bring all 3 of these incredibly distinct sources together. What is the overarching theme here? Our journey took us through 3 distinct layers of terror. First, we explored the mundane limits of the human mind in the 2001 film The Hole, where we learned the true trap is our own psychological breaking point. Second, we navigated the biblical apocalypse of the Death Valley creepypasta, where the pit serves as a cosmic prison for terrifying, unfathomable forces. And finally, we looked into the metaphysical mirror from the writing prompts, where the void is simply a reflection of society's waste, despair, and unavoidable consequences. It's almost like the abyss simply takes the exact shape of whatever we bring to the edge.
Which leaves us with this final, lingering thought. If you were walking through the woods tomorrow and just stumbled across a perfectly round, infinitely deep, bottomless pit, what would you do? What secret would you throw in? What burden would you try to bury forever? Or, standing there, staring down into that endless, magnetic blackness? Would you jump? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Until next time, keep your eyes open and definitely watch your step.